Picture this, a 16-year-old homeless girl. Soaking wet. Starving. Hiding in the shadows of a billionaire's private hangar. She's got nothing. No home. No family. No future that anyone can see. But she's watching a team of million-dollar engineers, guys with degrees from MIT and Stanford, standing around a broken $70 million jet, completely stumped. And this girl, she knows exactly what's wrong. Now here's where it gets crazy. She could stay quiet, stay invisible like she's learned to do on the streets. But instead, she steps into the light and says 5 simple words that will change everything. If you permit, I will fix it. Everyone laughs. Everyone except the billionaire whose life she's about to save. Because that broken engine? It wasn't just broken. It was sabotaged. Someone wanted him dead. And this homeless teenager was the only person in that room smart enough to see it. Her name was Emma Martinez. And this is the story of how a girl who had nothing became the person who fixed everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will restore your faith in the power of one person who refuses to give up. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. You know, sometimes the biggest moments in our lives come when we're at our lowest. That's what happened to Emma Martinez on a cold November night in Dallas, Texas. Emma was 16 years old, and she'd been living on the streets for 8 months. 8 long months of sleeping in doorways, scrounging for food, and trying to stay invisible. But Emma wasn't like other homeless kids. She carried something precious with her, a worn leather notebook that had belonged to her father, Carlos Martinez. Carlos had been one of the best airplane mechanics in Texas. He could hear what was wrong with an engine just by listening to it. From the time Emma was 8 until she was 13, he'd taken her to the airport every weekend. While other kids were at soccer practice or playing video games, Emma was learning about turbines and fuel systems and the poetry of how machines work. Mija, her father would say, his hands covered in grease, his smile wide and proud. Machines don't lie. They tell you exactly what's wrong if you know how to listen. Then her mother got sick. Cancer. The medical bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. Her father lost his job during company layoffs, just 6 months before his pension would have kicked in. Just 6 months before they would have had the insurance they needed. He died a year after her mother, his heart simply giving out from the weight of losing everything. Emma had no other family. Social services put her in a group home, but the other kids there weren't kind. They stole her things, mocked her dreams. So one night she ran. She took her father's notebook and disappeared into the city. That November night, rain was hammering down on Dallas like the sky was angry. Emma had been walking for hours, soaked to the bone, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. That's when she saw the private airport hangar with its doors slightly open, warm light spilling out. She slipped inside like a shadow. The hangar was huge and bright and warm. And right in the center sat the most beautiful airplane Emma had ever seen. A sleek private jet that probably cost more than 100 houses. But something was wrong. A crowd of people in expensive clothes stood around it, and they all looked frustrated and angry. Emma pressed herself against the wall behind some equipment, trying to be invisible. But her eyes were drawn to the jet's exposed engine. Even from 30 feet away, she could see the problem. The angle was wrong. The bearing housing wasn't sitting right. "This is unacceptable," a man's voice boomed across the hangar. Emma peeked out to see him, a tall man in a suit that probably cost more than a car. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. "I pay you people a fortune, and you're telling me you can't fix one engine?" A nervous man in a white coat stammered. "Mr. Thompson, sir, we've run every diagnostic test. The computer can't find the specific problem." "Then you're not looking hard enough." The rich man, Mr. Thompson, turned away in disgust, and that's when one of the workers spotted Emma. "Hey, there's some kid back there." All eyes turned to Emma. She froze. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but she was so tired, so cold, so hungry. "It's just a homeless kid," someone laughed. "Probably looking for something to steal." A security guard started walking toward her. "Come on, kid. You gotta leave." But Emma couldn't stop staring at that engine. The problem was so clear to her. The high-pressure turbine shaft had shifted, probably from heat stress during the last maintenance check. It was causing a vibration that would make the engine shut down. Why couldn't these expensive engineers see it? The words came out before she could stop them. "Your shaft alignment is off by about 2 millimeters." The hangar went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Mr. Thompson turned slowly. What did you say? Emma swallowed hard. Her voice came out stronger this time. The high-pressure turbine shaft. It's not tracking true. That's why your engine won't stay running. The vibration triggers a safety shutdown. The engineers stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Then they started laughing. Big, mean laughs that made Emma's cheeks burn. This is rich, one of them said. Some street kid thinks she knows more than us? But Mr. Thompson wasn't laughing. He was studying Emma with sharp, intelligent eyes. There was something in the way she'd spoken, not showing off, just stating a fact, that caught his attention. How do you know about jet engines? He asked. My father taught me, Emma said simply. He was a mechanic. A really good one. This is insane, Dad, a teenage boy next to Mr. Thompson said. He looked about Emma's age, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Emma had seen in her entire life. You're not actually listening to her, are you? Mr. Thompson held up his hand for silence. He kept his eyes on Emma. Can you fix it? Emma took a deep breath. This was crazy. These people would probably laugh at her again. But she thought of her father, of everything he'd taught her, of how he'd believed she could do anything. If you permit, she said quietly, I will fix it. The words hung in the air like a promise. Like a prayer. Like a challenge to everyone who'd ever looked at her and seen nothing but a poor, dirty, homeless kid. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. You have one chance. If you're right, you get to finish the job. If you're wrong, you leave. Deal. Deal, Emma said. She had no idea that this moment, this one decision to speak up, would change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone in that hangar. Because Emma was right about the engine. But she was about to discover something far more dangerous. Someone had sabotaged this plane on purpose. Someone wanted Mr. Thompson dead. And now Emma was the only person who could stop it. Let me tell you, the tension in that hangar could have been cut with a knife. Emma walked toward that massive jet engine, and every eye in the building followed her. She could feel their judgment like weight on her shoulders. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She probably smelled bad. She definitely looked like she didn't belong there. But when Emma put her hands on that engine, something changed inside her. This was her father's world. This was the language he'd taught her to speak. I need tools, she said, her voice steadier now. A number 12 wrench, a torque wrench, and a small mirror. A mirror? One of the engineers scoffed. What are you going to do, check your makeup? No, Emma said patiently. I need to see behind the coupling housing without taking the whole thing apart. Unless you want to waste another 6 hours. Mr. Thompson nodded to his workers. Get her what she needs. As they brought the tools, Emma pulled out her father's notebook. The pages were stained and worn, filled with diagrams and notes in her father's neat handwriting. Some pages had her own additions, things she'd learned, problems she'd solved in her mind during long, hungry nights on the street. One of the engineers looked over her shoulder and gasped. These calculations, this is advanced stuff. Where did you learn this? My dad didn't have fancy degrees, Emma said quietly. But he understood engines better than anyone I've ever met. She climbed up to the engine and began working. Her movements were careful and deliberate. Every turn of the wrench was precise. She used the mirror to peer into the hidden spaces of the engine, and there it was, scoring on the bearing race that all their expensive computers had missed. Look at this, she said, holding the mirror steady so the lead engineer could see. His face went pale. How did we miss that? Because you were looking where the computers told you to look, Emma said. Not mean just honest. Sometimes you have to trust your hands more than your machines. As she worked, Mr. Thompson moved closer. There was something about watching her that fascinated him. Her hands were small and scarred from street life, but they moved with absolute confidence. You learned all this from your father? He asked. Emma's hands paused for just a second. Yeah, he was the best. He died when I was 13. I'm sorry. Me too. Then something happened that changed everything. As Emma was loosening a coupling, she noticed something else, fresh scratches on a fuel line. Scratches that hadn't been there when she started. Someone had tampered with the engine while everyone was watching her work. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just a mechanical failure. This was sabotage. Mr. Thompson, she said quietly, I need to talk to you. Privately. When she showed him the scratches, his face went hard as stone. You're sure? My father lost his job because someone sabotaged his work and blamed him, Emma said. I know what deliberate damage looks like. Someone wants your plane to stay broken. Or worse, they want it to look like I broke it. That's when things got complicated. Mr. Thompson's wife arrived, a woman dripping with jewelry and contempt. "Richard," she said, so his name was Richard. "What are you doing? You're embarrassing us with this child. This child just found sabotage our $1 million team missed," Richard shot back. Then more people arrived. A man in an expensive suit who smiled too much and whose eyes were too sharp. His name was William Carter, and he claimed to be Richard's friend. But Emma saw the way he watched everything, calculating, waiting. "Richard, let me help," William said smoothly. "I can have my team here in an hour. Surely you're not going to trust your life to a homeless teenager." "She's found more in an hour than your team would find in a week," Richard replied coldly. As Emma continued working, she felt the weight of everyone's expectations. Richard's wife thought she was a fraud. Richard's son thought she was an embarrassment. The engineers thought she was a lucky guesser. And William Carter. Emma didn't know what he thought, but his smile never reached his eyes. But Emma kept working, because that's what her father had taught her. When everyone's yelling and panicking, you stay calm. You stay focused. You do the work. She found more problems. A pressure valve that had been replaced with a cheaper, dangerous version. A fuel line deliberately weakened. Each discovery made Richard's face darker and William Carter's smile a little more strained. "How many more?" Richard asked quietly. "I don't know," Emma admitted. "But Mr. Thompson, whoever did this has been planning it for a long time. This isn't amateur hour. This is professional." That night stretched into morning. Emma worked through exhaustion, through hunger, through the pain in her back and hands. Other workers started helping her. A woman named Sarah who'd been too scared to speak up before, an older mechanic named Tom who remembered what it was like to be young and doubted. They became a team. And slowly, piece by piece, Emma put that engine back together. Not just fixed it, made it better than it had been. Because she wasn't just repairing an airplane. She was honoring her father's memory. She was proving that knowledge and skill matter more than money or status. As the sun came up, painting the hangar in gold light, Emma stepped back from the engine. "It's ready," she said simply. The moment of truth had arrived. Sometimes in life, everything comes down to one moment. One test that determines everything that comes after. For Emma, that moment came when Richard Thompson looked at her and said, "Start it up." The hangar had filled with people overnight. Word had spread about the homeless girl fixing a billionaire's jet. News crews waited outside. Federal investigators had shown up after Richard reported the sabotage. Everyone wanted to see if Emma was a genius or a fraud. Emma's hands shook as she moved to the control panel. What if she was wrong? What if she'd missed something? What if the engine failed and everyone's worst assumptions about her came true? Then she remembered her father's voice. "Mija, an engine will tell you if you did right. Trust your work." She took a deep breath. Starting ignition sequence in 3, 2, 1. The engine roared to life. At first, it was just a whisper. Then a hum. Then a powerful, steady roar that filled the entire hangar. The monitoring screens lit up, all green, all perfect. The engine ran smooth as silk, no vibration, no hesitation. For 30 seconds, nobody breathed. Then the engine settled into a perfect idle, and the hangar erupted in cheers. Emma felt tears running down her face. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Richard Thompson started clapping, and then everyone joined in. Even some of the engineers who'd mocked her were applauding now. Sarah was crying. Old Tom had his arm around her shoulders, grinning like a proud grandfather. But Emma held up her hand. "Wait, that was just the ground test. We need a real flight test to be sure." "Then we fly," Richard said firmly. That's when William Carter made his move. "Richard, I must protest," he said, his smooth mask slipping. "The liability alone." "I don't care about liability," Richard cut him off. "I care about the truth." Over the next few hours, as they prepared for the flight test, Emma kept finding more evidence. Hidden compartments in the plane. Secret modifications. Each discovery pointed to something bigger than just one sabotaged engine. A detective arrived, a kind-faced woman named Detective Maria Santos. She'd been investigating disappearances linked to private airports. When Emma showed her what she'd found, Detective Santos went very quiet. "Emma," she said gently, "you may have just cracked open something huge. We've been tracking a trafficking network that's been using private planes. We just couldn't prove it." That's when Emma understood. This wasn't about one rich man's plane. This was about a network of powerful people using their wealth to hurt others. Just like the powerful people who'd destroyed her father. The flight test was scheduled for 2 p.m. But that morning, Emma noticed something that made her heart stop. A tiny device attached to the landing gear. Not a bomb, something worse. A hydraulic cutter designed to trigger during landing, making the gear collapse and sending the plane careening into the terminal. If she hadn't found it, dozens of people could have died. How did you spot that? Detective Santos asked as the bomb squad carefully removed it. I was listening, Emma said. The gear sounded wrong. Just a tiny click that shouldn't be there. My dad taught me that machines talk if you know their language. They found 2 more devices before Richard finally said, That's it. We're tearing this whole plane apart. And they did. For hours, a team of people. Not just the expensive engineers now, but regular workers who'd been inspired by Emma's courage, searched every inch of that aircraft. They found 5 more sabotage devices, each one designed to fail at a different time, in a different way. Whoever wanted Richard dead had been thorough. Finally, as afternoon turned to evening, Emma declared the plane truly safe. Now we can fly, she said. The test flight was incredible. Emma sat in the cockpit with the pilot, Captain James Miller, a veteran with 30 years of experience. He'd insisted on reviewing every bit of her work personally. Miss Martinez, he'd said, I've been flying since before you were born, and I've never seen documentation this thorough. You work like someone who understands that lives depend on getting it right. They do, Emma had replied simply. As the plane lifted into the sky, Emma felt her father with her. She imagined him sitting beside her, seeing what she'd accomplished, proud of how she'd used everything he'd taught her. The flight was perfect. Every system worked flawlessly. The engine Emma had rebuilt ran even better than the manufacturer's specifications. When they landed, Richard Thompson pulled Emma aside. You didn't just save my plane, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved my life. My son's life. Maybe a lot of other lives too. I just did what needed doing, Emma said. No, Richard shook his head. You did what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's courage. That evening, as they celebrated in the hangar, Detective Santos arrested William Carter. Turned out he was part of the trafficking network. He'd been sabotaging Richard's planes to take over his aviation routes for smuggling. But it went even deeper than that. The investigation was just beginning. And Emma, with her sharp eyes and her father's knowledge, was right in the middle of it. Little did she know, the real fight was just beginning. You know what's harder than fixing a broken engine? Fixing a broken system. Over the next few weeks, Emma's life changed in ways she never imagined. Richard Thompson offered her a real job, not charity, but a genuine position with a salary, benefits, and training. A retired judge named Ruth Washington, who'd known Emma's father years ago, became her legal guardian. Your father fixed my husband's plane for 20 years, Judge Washington told Emma with tears in her eyes. Often for free when we couldn't pay. He was one of the best men I ever knew. It's an honor to help his daughter. Emma moved into the small apartment above Judge Washington's garage. It had a bed, a desk, and heat. After 8 months on the streets, it felt like a palace. But Emma couldn't rest, because what she'd uncovered at that hangar kept growing like a dark flower. Detective Santos brought her in to consult on other cases. Turns out, Richard's plane wasn't the only one that had been sabotaged. There were patterns across multiple airports, multiple private jets, all owned by wealthy people who wouldn't cooperate with certain business proposals. The trafficking network was massive. It reached into police departments, regulatory agencies, even into Congress. They'd been using private aviation to move drugs, weapons, and people, all hidden behind the legitimate business of wealthy executives flying around the country. And everyone who tried to stop them ended up either bought off, scared off, or dead. Emma threw herself into the investigation. She'd examine planes, find hidden modifications, document everything with the same precision she'd learned from her father. Richard's son, Jake, who'd been so embarrassed by her at first, started helping too. I was such a jerk to you, Jake admitted one day as they worked together. I thought being rich meant I was better than other people. But you taught me that what matters is what you know and what you do with it. Your dad's teaching you that too, Emma said. He's trying to be better. That's brave. The case against William Carter and his network was building, but it was slow. These were powerful people with expensive lawyers. They knew how to delay, how to intimidate, how to make witnesses disappear. Then Emma had an idea. What if we go public? She suggested at a meeting with Detective Santos and Richard. What if we show people exactly what we found? Not the technical stuff, but the story. Make it so big they can't bury it. Richard was hesitant. That could put you in danger. I've been in danger, Emma said quietly. I've been cold and hungry and alone. I survived that. I can survive this too. So they did something unusual. They held a press conference. Not Richard in his expensive suit talking about corporate sabotage, but Emma, in her simple clothes, explaining in clear language how wealthy criminals had turned private aviation into a smuggling operation. She showed the devices she'd found. She explained how the sabotage worked. She told her own story, how being homeless had made her invisible, and how that invisibility had let her see things others missed. The story went viral. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the teenage girl who'd exposed a criminal network. And that's when things got dangerous. Emma started getting threats. Anonymous messages telling her to stop talking, to stop investigating, to disappear back into the streets where she belonged. Someone slashed the tires on Judge Washington's car. Someone broke into the hangar and destroyed some of Emma's tools. Richard hired security for her, but Emma refused to back down. My father couldn't fight back, she told Judge Washington one night. They destroyed him and he had no voice. But I have a voice now. I'm not wasting it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Other workers, mechanics, maintenance crew, pilots, started coming forward with their own stories. They'd seen things, suspected things, but been too afraid to speak up. Emma's courage gave them courage. Within 3 months, the investigation had spread to 12 states. 47 people were arrested, including 2 senators, a police commissioner, and executives from 6 major corporations. But the leader of the network, a man named Alexander Cross who owned the largest aviation maintenance company in the country, remained free, protected by lawyers and money and connections. Until Emma found the evidence that would bring him down. She was consulting on a plane in Miami when she noticed something strange in the maintenance records. A pattern of parts being ordered but never installed. Money being paid for work never done. She traced it back, following the paper trail like her father had taught her to follow fuel lines. It all led to Cross. When the FBI raided his offices, they found everything. Records of payments, lists of corrupt officials, evidence of murders disguised as accidents. It was over. At the trial, Emma testified. She sat in that courtroom in her simple blue dress, and she told the truth. She explained how the sabotage worked, how the network operated, how good people had died because of corporate greed. Alexander Cross's lawyer tried to break her. Miss Martinez, isn't it true you're just a high school dropout with no formal training? Yes, Emma said calmly. So why should we believe you over trained experts? Because experts can be bought, Emma replied. The truth can't. And engines don't lie. All I did was listen. Cross was convicted. 30 years in federal prison. His network collapsed. The reforms that followed changed the entire aviation industry. But for Emma, the real victory came later. Let me tell you about the day that mattered most. 6 months after the trial, Emma stood in a different hangar. This one was at a community college in Dallas. And it was filled with young people just like her. Kids from rough backgrounds, foster care, homeless shelters. Kids who'd been told they'd never amount to anything. Richard Thompson had funded the program with his own money. They called it the Carlos Martinez Scholarship Initiative, named after Emma's father. It would teach aviation maintenance to kids who'd never had a chance. Emma was teaching the first class. She stood in front of 30 teenagers, and she saw herself in every face. The uncertainty, the hope, the fear that this good thing couldn't possibly last. My name is Emma Martinez, she began. A year ago, I was homeless. I was hungry. I was invisible. A lot of people would have said I had no future. She paused, looking at each student. But I had something precious. I had knowledge my father gave me. And I had a chance, one chance, to prove that knowledge mattered more than credentials or money or status. She walked over to a training engine. This engine doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It doesn't care about your past or what anyone said you'd become. It only cares if you treat it with respect and skill. Master those 2 things, and you can make anything fly. Over the next months, Emma split her time between teaching, continuing her own education, and consulting on investigations. She'd been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, but she'd deferred for a year to get the program running. Richard's company had transformed too. Jake had taken a real interest in the business, learning it from the ground up. He worked in the hangar alongside Emma's students, earning his mechanic certification before he'd take over any executive role. You changed us, Richard told Emma one day. You reminded us what actually matters. But the moment that brought Emma to tears came on a Sunday afternoon. Judge Washington called her into the living room. Emma, I have something for you. It was a box of her father's things that Emma thought had been lost forever. His tools, his certification papers, photos of him working on planes. And a letter sealed, with Emma's name on it in his handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. My dearest Emma, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I can't be there to see you grow up. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the life you deserved. But I want you to know something important. You have a gift, Mija. You see things others miss. You understand how things work, not just with your mind, but with your heart. Don't let anyone convince you that gift is worthless because of where you come from or what you don't have. Knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you. Use it well. Use it to help people. Use it to fix what's broken in this world. I believe in you, today and always. Love, Papa. Emma cried. Judge Washington held her. And in that moment, Emma felt her father's love wrapping around her like a warm coat. The anniversary of that rainy November night brought everyone back together. The hangar was decorated for a celebration. All 30 students from the first class were graduating, ready for apprenticeships at airports across the country. Sarah, the engineer who'd helped Emma that first night, was now head of safety training at Richard's company. Tom, the old mechanic, had become the program's lead instructor. Detective Santos had been promoted and was now heading a task force against corporate corruption. And Emma? Emma stood at the podium to give the graduation speech. A year ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I was looking for shelter from the rain. I found something bigger. I found purpose. I found family. I found my voice. She looked out at the graduates. Each of you has a gift. Maybe it's understanding engines like me. Maybe it's something else. But whatever it is, the world needs it. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough because of where you started. Your beginning doesn't determine your destination. Your courage does. After the ceremony, Emma walked to the plane that had started everything, Richard's jet, now known throughout the industry as the Phoenix, because it had risen from sabotage to become a symbol of truth and justice. She placed her hand on the engine cowling, feeling the cool metal. I did it, Papa, she whispered. I kept our promise. I fixed what was broken. Not just the engine, but the system that tried to break us. A sound made her turn. A young girl, maybe 13, stood nearby. She was thin, her clothes worn, her eyes wary. Emma recognized a younger version of herself. Are you Emma Martinez? The girl asked quietly. I am. My mom, she said you might be able to help. I want to learn about planes. But we don't have money for school, and I'm not smart like you. Emma's heart squeezed. She knelt down to the girl's level. What's your name? Sophia. Sophia, let me tell you a secret. Being smart isn't about what you have. It's about what you're willing to learn. And you're already smart, you asked for help. That's the hardest thing. Really, really. Emma stood and held out her hand. Come on, let me show you something. As they walked back into the hangar, Emma began explaining how the engine worked. Sophia's eyes grew wide with wonder. Emma saw the spark of understanding, the same spark her father had lit in her so many years ago. The cycle was continuing, knowledge passing from one generation to the next, from one survivor to another, from one dreamer to another. That evening, as the sun set over Dallas, Emma sat with Judge Washington on the porch of their small house. Your father would be so proud, Judge Washington said softly. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. In the distance, a plane took off, its engines singing the song her father had taught her to hear. The song of machinery and humanity working in harmony. The song of courage defeating corruption. The song of knowledge triumphing over prejudice. Emma had been homeless, invisible, counted out. But she'd risen. And now she was lifting others with her. Because that's what fixing things really means. It's not just about engines and metal and fuel lines. It's about fixing the broken parts of the world that say some people matter more than others. That money matters more than truth. That credentials matter more than capability. Emma had fixed all of that, one engine at a time. And she was just getting started. The end. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who can see what we've missed. Sometimes the voices we ignore are the ones speaking the truth we need to hear. And sometimes one person's courage to say, if you permit, I will fix it, can change everything. What talent are you overlooking in someone today simply because they don't look the part? And what miracles might unfold if you gave them just one chance?